Okay, so we're back, and as always, we're looking at another great first line.
Hmm.
And this time, we're going to be taking a deep dive into For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Oh, very nice.
So this is Ernest Hemingway. And I have to admit, this one's been on my list for a while.
I bet.
It's a classic. I mean, I don't know how we haven't covered it before.
Right.
But, so yeah.
Well, I'm glad we're getting to it now.
Me too. So the opening line of For Whom the Bell Tolls is, "He lay flat on the brown pine-needled floor of the forest, his chin on his folded arms, and high overhead the wind blew in the tops of the pine trees."
Hmm.
So my first impression, like when I read that, I'm just thinking, peaceful, like
Yeah.
very serene image. But then I'm
Right.
like, wait a minute, there's this guy
Yeah, there's a guy there.
alone in the forest.
Yeah, he's not just napping, you know?
Right, exactly. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think there's this deceptive calmness to the line
Right.
that Hemingway's so good at. I mean, he doesn't need to throw you right into the action. He lets the scene kind of unfold and you're drawn into it, you know?
Mhm.
And it immediately sets the tone for the entire novel. Like, right away, you're in this world of isolation and introspection.
Yeah, and speaking of isolation, like you mentioned, the guy's alone, right? But there's also this sense of vastness because of the forest.
Yeah.
So it's not just that he's alone, it's that he's this tiny figure.
In this massive landscape.
Yeah, exactly, against this huge backdrop. And I think that plays into the themes of, well, obviously isolation, but also, man versus nature, or like the individual's place in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like Hemingway setting us up for these grand themes from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really interesting, too, because when you think about the Spanish Civil War, which is, the backdrop of the novel,
Right.
it's like that calm before the storm, right?
Exactly, like a very literal calm before the storm.
But then there's also this kind of foreshadowing happening, too, with that wind.
Right. The wind blowing high overhead.
Yeah, it's almost like a hint that things are about to change,
Yeah, like there are these forces at play that are much bigger than just this one guy lying on the forest floor.
Totally. And this might be a good time to talk about Hemingway's writing style because, I mean, we've talked about minimalist writers before.
Sure.
But Hemingway really takes it to another level.
He does. He's like the master of it.
Yeah, like he uses these really simple, direct words.
Yeah.
But they're so evocative, like you can practically feel the pine needles in the wind.
Totally. It's like he paints this vivid picture with the fewest brushstrokes possible.
Yeah, and it's not just visual either. Like there's this whole mood and atmosphere that he creates with just that one sentence.
It's incredible. I mean, it's a masterclass in less is more.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because even though he's being so minimal with the language, he's still packing in a lot of those deeper themes.
Right, like we were talking about before, the isolation, the human connection to nature, and that hint of conflict to come.
Yeah, and I think there's also this introspective tone to the line. It's like he's setting the stage for a story that's not just about action and war, but also about internal struggles.
Right, like these bigger questions about life and death and what it all means.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that sets the reader up for the emotional journey they're about to go on.
Totally. It's like Hemingway saying, hey, this isn't just a war story, it's a human story.
Yeah. And he's doing all of that with just one sentence. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. It's a testament to his skill as a writer.
So before we wrap up, I guess we should recap some of the key takeaways from this opening line. I mean, first off, it's definitely memorable, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It sticks with you. And I think that's partly because of that deceptive calmness that we talked about.
Yeah, it draws you in and makes you want to know more.
And then there's that whole theme of isolation, which is obviously huge throughout the novel.
Right, and the human-nature relationship, too.
Yeah, and then that subtle foreshadowing with the wind.
Right, like a hint of the conflict to come.
And of course, Hemingway's amazing minimalist style.
Yeah, he really packs a punch with just a few words.
And lastly, that introspective tone that sets the stage for those deeper themes.
Exactly. It's a line that really works on multiple levels.
So to our listeners out there, before you go, we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. We talked about the forest setting. What do you think its significance is throughout the novel?
Oh, that's a good one.
Is it just a backdrop? Or is it a symbol for something more?
Right.
Right? Maybe it represents the challenges the characters face or their inner turmoil. I don't know. It's something to think about as you read or reread For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Definitely something to keep in mind.
All right. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time
See ya.
for another great first line.
It's good.